This is Part 2, Episode 84. The icy-blue layer cracked and disappeared. Hu Yuhao's claws pushed Wang Yanfeng's barrier 3 feet into the ground. It was his dark golden terror claw. The Snow Lady wasn't idle either. A deep blue light flashed, and coordinated with Hu Yuhao's attack perfectly. When the dark golden blades disappeared, an icy-blue light blade of light struck the barrier ferociously. Clang! A clear and crisp sound of metal striking metal resonated out loudly. The Snow Demon sect was horrified to discover that there was an obvious crack on an invincible barrier activated by a 6-ringed Soul Emperor. What did this mean? It meant that the defense of the barrier was about to be overcome. This also meant that Hu Yuhao and the Snow Lady's repeated attacks bore an offensive power that had reached a terrifying level. The Snow Lady's attacks were all ultimate ice and snow. Along with the dark golden terrorclaw's destructiveness, and Wang Yanfeng's inability to directly control his barrier due to his shock, such a situation had occurred. However, Wang Yanfeng also recovered from the shock to his soul after this attack. He immediately discovered the crack in his barrier. Horrified, he quickly retreated. At the same time, his third soul ring lit up. His hands formed fists in front of him, and he punched out towards Hu Yuhao. This was Wang Yanfeng's body-soul's third soul skill, Mountain Quake Strike. Hu Yuhao didn't choose to clash directly against the fist this time. He struck his palm towards the ground and leaned back. A row of jets appeared on his shoulders. When his wheelchair was propelled into the air by the rebound from his palm strike, the jets were also fired. Instantly, he shot several dozen meters into the sky. Wang Yanfeng's attack was a measure to stop Hu Yuhao from attacking him anymore. With his current state, he wasn't able to lock onto his opponent, so Hu Yuhao managed to easily dodge his Mountain Quake Strike. However, Hu Yuhao was still given a scare by the strength of the Mountain Quake Strike. It unleashed a ball of green light, roughly the size of a human head. It stopped for a moment in the air before blowing apart, converting into a greenish-black sphere more than 5 meters in diameter. The force of its explosion was immense. He must have completed the second awakening of his martial soul. While Hu Yuhao was in awe, his body had already started to descend. Right now, the Snow Demon sect's team members in the waiting area were all in shock. Who would have expected Hu Yuhao to fly so high up in the air even though he was in a wheelchair? Furthermore, he appeared very agile. His right hand was so powerful. How strong would he be if his whole body could move? The Snow Lady had already returned behind Hu Yuhao's back. She pushed his wheelchair through the air, and a deep blue light shot forward. In this manner, she managed to slide his wheelchair down through the air, landing on the other side of the stage. Wang Yanfeng also took this chance to catch his breath. When he saw Hu Yuhao on the other side of the stage, he felt helpless, and almost spat out blood in frustration. Although the main effect of spiritual shock had already disappeared, he still had a splitting headache right now. As he looked at Hu Yuhao, he felt fear rising inside. He hadn't expected this opponent would be so difficult to deal with. When he sensed his own condition, he was on the verge of tears. His soul power had dropped by 40% after he was hit by Hu Yuhao's spiritual shock and the subsequent attacks. He only had 60% of his soul power left. His soul power was very dense, considering that he was from the body sect. Ordinary soul masters couldn't compare to him at all. When the invincible barrier had first appeared, it had indeed caused a lot of problems for soul masters. Soul engineers who were financially sound loved to use their invincible barrier to protect themselves when they fought, just before using their strongest soul tool against their soul master opponent. It was a move that left many soul masters feeling helpless and oppressed. However, soul masters slowly found a way to deal with this as time passed, even though they couldn't catch up to soul engineers in terms of technology. For example, they could launch an assault against the invincible barrier. While the assault couldn't harm their opponent, their soul power would fall significantly as the barrier came under attack. The stronger the assault, the greater the depletion. Of course, this was under the condition that the soul master wasn't forced back by his opponent. Hu Yuhao used this fact to launch a few attacks, causing Wang Yanfeng's soul power to fall by almost half. This would undoubtedly be very useful for the rest of the fight. However, Wang Yangfeng wasn't a simple character either. He turned around to face Hu Yuhao, but didn't chase after him. He remained where he was and took a deep breath, initiating the circulation of his soul power. As he recovered from his headache, he tried to adjust his condition. The elites of top-rank sects weren't easy to deal with. Even under unfavorable circumstances, Wang Yangfeng didn't panic at all. Rather, he analyzed the situation. Hu Yuhao's flaw was too obvious. He needed his wheelchair to move. This meant that he couldn't fight like Wang Qiu'er, using a high speed and tempo to overwhelm his opponent. Wang Yangfeng was exploiting this opportunity to catch his breath. However, he turned grim following this. That was because he saw Hu Yuhao brandishing a milk bottle, replenishing his own soul power. Wang Yangfeng had his own milk bottle, but there was one thing that Hu Yuhao had judged accurately. The body sect had a very strong distaste for soul tools. While it had become less acute in recent years, they only used soul tools that had practical uses to them. For example, milk bottles, flying-type soul tools, and protective-type soul tools, such as the invincible barrier. However, Wang Yangfeng wouldn't use his milk bottle in a fight. That would be giving his opponent the best chance to attack him. Doing so would mean there was a period of time when he would be interrupted. That period of interruption could be fatal against a strong opponent. Wang Yangfeng couldn't take it anymore. He was infuriated by how Hu Yuhao seemed so contemptuous of him. He crouched and leapt skywards. At the same time, he extended his hands to his sides and something weird occurred. Wang Yanfeng's body continued to rise, and didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. His 6 soul rings lit up at the same time. Not only this, but a greenish-bronze glow also lit up behind Wang Yanfeng's back in the form of 2 huge palms. The greenish-bronze hands carried a very thick aura that suppressed the entire stage. Xu Qianran squinted on the main stage and laughed coldly. I thought they'd continue to conceal their abilities. They've finally appeared. The body sect is indeed in the Heavenly Soul Empire. HMPH. Jing Hongchen also clenched his fist, and there was a look of bitter resentment in his eyes. When the body sect attacked the illustrious Virtue Hall, it was the biggest humiliation of his life. How could he not feel hatred when he saw them now? Hu Yuhao found it difficult to breathe on stage. The appearance of the greenish-bronze palms behind his opponent's back made him feel as if he were being suppressed by a mountain. The ground started creaking too. It was like the stage couldn't handle this pressure, and was about to collapse. Only the Snow Lady was still sitting on his shoulders and behaving as if nothing had happened. Was this the second awakening of a body soul? Hu Yuhao was very calm right now. He knew that his opponent was from the body sect, and thus he had expected the fight to become intense. This was a bronze-level body soul. He recalled what Elder Mu had told him about body souls. Yuhao, I'll tell you what a body soul is today, and why they are so strong. Body souls are very special existences among martial souls. Generally speaking, our martial souls can be anything, but they are rarely a part of our body. We are incomplete if a part of our body is our martial soul. The earliest soul masters with body souls were believed to be mutants. Furthermore, the advantages of body souls weren't known yet. That's why they were looked down on. But a genius with a body soul appeared and managed to unlock the secret of making a body soul strong. This person was the first sect leader of the body sect. He went through a period of tireless cultivation, and discovered that having one's own body as a martial soul was more reliable than any other type of martial soul. More importantly, a body soul possesses characteristics that other martial souls don't have. For example, it's easier to control a body soul, compared to a regular martial soul. This is derived from the fact that humans have great control over their own limbs. In addition, the limit of a body soul is also much higher than most martial souls. Simply put, you can only control the size of your martial soul if it's a sword. You can pour your soul power into it, and use your soul rings and skills to enhance its strength. If your martial soul is your arm, it isn't just about size anymore. First, every finger can change significantly. Even your veins and arteries, bones, and pulse can be controlled. A soul skill can exhibit different kinds of possibilities in the hands of a strong soul master with a body soul. The most frightening part of a body soul is in its second awakening. Our martial souls awaken when we are 6 years old. There are martial soul imprints on our body from that age onwards. We can start cultivating if we have soul power. The second awakening is something unique to a body soul. What's a second awakening? It refers to an evolution in your martial soul. It also means that a body soul can evolve one level higher than others. Let me give you an example. If a body soul is as strong as an earth dragon after its first awakening, it might become as strong as a true dragon after its second awakening. There's a huge change in quality. Right now, only body soul masters are able to experience this second awakening, and this is why the body sect continues to prosper. Someone who possesses a body soul and is able to become a soul master will want to join the body sect and make themselves stronger. The body sect is also very protective and caring towards their disciples. It is possible to tell if a body soul is undergoing its second awakening. If you meet such a soul master in the future, you must be very careful. Their body can become a terrifying weapon. There are even different levels of this second awakening. The body sect categorizes them into 4 levels. After the second awakening is completed, light projections formed from the individual's martial soul will appear behind him as he unleashes his evolved abilities. The color of this projection is very key to understanding the level of his second awakening. A black projection carrying a metal glow appears during an iron-ranked second awakening. After this awakening, the fighting strength of the individual's martial soul will increase by 30% or more. A bronze glow represents a bronze-ranked second awakening. After this awakening, the fighting strength of the individual's martial soul will increase by 60%. One level higher is silver. Such an awakening will only appear in more important body parts, such as the skeleton or head. Once the awakening is completed, one's fighting strength can double. Some can even increase their fighting strength by a level. A soul king can temporarily possess the offensive abilities of a soul emperor. The rarest and scariest rank is a gold-ranked second awakening. The light projection created will be golden. If you meet such a soul master, you should not fight him unless your soul power is more than a level higher than his. Such a soul master possesses great explosive power, but this will vary between different soul masters depending on the strength of their martial soul. When they undergo their second awakening, their offensive strength might even increase up to 3 times their normal standard. Your eyes are also a body soul. Considering how important one's eyes are, I think its second awakening will be at least a bronze-ranked one. Since your abilities are spiritual, I think it'll be a silver-ranked one. If that happens, your abilities will greatly increase. It's precisely because the body sect's disciples can undergo this second awakening of their body souls that the body sect looks down on soul tools. If you meet them in the future, you must be very cautious. While Elder Mu wasn't around anymore, his words were still deeply entrenched in Yu Hao's memories. When Yu Hao saw those bronze palms, he knew that Wang Yangfeng's second awakening was at least a bronze-ranked one. Elder Mu also told him that most of the disciples in the body sect would only experience an iron-ranked second awakening. It was rare to see a bronze-ranked second awakening. As for a silver-ranked ones, there weren't more than 10 people in the body sect who reached that level during their second awakening. As for the gold-ranked second awakening, only their first sect leader had reached that level. However, the sect's members didn't crave gold-ranked abilities. The stronger one's second awakening was, the greater one would be drained. At the gold-ranked level, one's life power might be completely drained. The bronze palms shone brightly behind Wang Yanfeng's back up there in midair. Wang Yangfeng wasn't hiding his identity anymore. He mimed a pressing action as he aimed his palms towards Yu Hao. Suddenly, the 2 bronze palms expanded rapidly, actually reaching a length of more than 10 meters and a width of more than 5 meters. Both palms struck down, crashing down towards Yu Hao's head. Before the palms reached him, the ground around Yu Hao had already caved in the shape of a palm. While Wen Yangfeng was furious because of how Yu Hao was so contemptuous of him, he wasn't careless at all. After they exchanged blows earlier, he knew Yu Hao wasn't an easy opponent to deal with. Without his second awakening, there wasn't any way he could defeat Hu Yuhao. Even though this blow depleted him greatly, he also had confidence that he could use it to win. With his cultivation as a soul emperor, the strength of his body-soul, and the increase in fighting strength from his second awakening, he believed that his opponent couldn't possibly defeat him. After all, Hu Yuhao was only a soul king. There was still a big gap between them. However, Hu Yuhao was smiling at this point. It looked like Hu Yuhao had met an old friend. His smile was casual and familiar. Wang Yangfeng abruptly felt as though the sky was turning around. Everything around him seemed to have suddenly changed. He was horrified to discover that Hu Yuhao was now floating in mid-air in his wheelchair. A frightening pressure started to bear down on him. No one had expected such a change. However, Hu Yuhao seemed to have done it very simply. He had released a pitch-black glow from his body. A projection of a turtle-like shield that seemed to have a snake-shaped carving shone along with his fifth soul ring, and appeared silently in front of him. Following this, a light flashed, and he changed positions with Wang Yangfeng. Wang Yangfeng was the one who was about to suffer from his own attack. Everyone felt that it was unreal, too astonishing. Even his fellow Tang sect members, except for Shusansha, were shocked. They couldn't believe what had just happened. Wang Yangfeng realized what was going on at the critical moment and shouted without any hesitation, "I concede defeat." A streak of dazzling silver light fell from the sky and engulfed his body. More than a quarter of his side of the stage was turned to dust and collapsed completely. The protective barriers on this side of the stage surged with blinding light. The more than 20 soul engineers, who were maintaining the protective barrier, all spat blood at the same time. A pair of bronze palm prints were still present on the ground that had caved in. The area that was struck was completely smooth and appeared worked by someone with splendid carving skills. Only 2 spots within this area hadn't caved in. Wang Yangfeng was in one of the spots, while Xingzhon, who had used his silver-colored protective barrier to protect Wang Yangfeng, was in the other spot. Xingzhon's arms were still shaking gently. He was horrified, but it wasn't obvious. As a titled Doluor, he should have been able to easily restrain a soul emperor. However, those palms made him finally understand why the body sect was so strong. Xingzhon knew that it would be impossible for him to unleash such a strong palm strike, without any soul tools even if he had 8 rings. Even soul masters who specialized in cultivating martial souls, might not be so terrifying, when they unleashed their martial soul true body with 7 rings. This was the strength of a body soul. However, Wang Yangfeng had still lost. Hu Yuhao was seated in his wheelchair in the air. He slowly landed with the Snow Lady's help. He seemed very relaxed, and didn't even pull out his milk bottle. Wang Yangfeng hadn't seen what had happened, but Xingzhon had witnessed everything clearly. Hu Yuhao had only taken his milk bottle out earlier. He didn't suck any soul power from the bottle. He had not been far from Hu Yuhao earlier, as he had been preparing to save the crippled young man. Hu Yuhao's milk bottle had unleashed a light that made it look like soul power was being absorbed from it. However, there weren't any soul power undulations from that light. Was it a smokescreen or illusion? At this point, Wang Yangfeng still couldn't believe that he had lost. However, he knew that he couldn't have blocked his own attack. He would have been critically injured even if he didn't die. There wasn't any way he could compete in the team round after this. As an elite from the younger generation of body sect disciples, he had actually lost to a soul king. It was even a soul king who was crippled. He was even more embarrassed that his opponent was from Shrek Academy. It was important to know that the body sect and Shrek Academy had many disputes with one another. Embarrassing. It was too embarrassing. Wang Yangfeng lowered his head in shame. He quickly rushed off the stage, and didn't even say anything. Hu Yuhao wore a smile as he sat back in his wheelchair. The light from his milk bottle appeared once again. This time, he was really sucking the soul power from the milk bottle to restore his own soul power. He didn't just win this physical fight. More importantly, he achieved a psychological and tactical victory. He had wanted to give his opponents the impression that he was willing to fight until the end against them. Both parties had clashed a few times with one another, and Wang Yangfeng couldn't help but feel that Hu Yuhao was really strong. The rest of the changes were all within Hu Yuhao's calculations. He used his imitation to tempt his opponent into unleashing an all-out attack. It was also his first time using the fifth soul skill of his spirit eyes, spiritual duplication. It was the strong soul skill that he obtained when he was in the Great Star Do Forest with Wang Qiu'er. It was obvious what soul skill he had duplicated from the effects of it. It was Shu Sanshi's mysterious underworld displacement. This divine skill from a defense-type soul master achieved the same divine effects even when he used it. No matter how well the Snow Demon sect knew him, they couldn't have guessed he had such a skill. Wang Yangfeng was the one who bore the consequences of his own attack. In fact, Wang Yangfeng had a wealth of live experience. It was a pity that he wasn't cunning enough to best Hu Yuhao. Bound to his wheelchair, Hu Yuhao was too deceptive. His greatest advantage wasn't any overwhelming ability, but the complexity of the types of abilities he possessed. He could use a myriad of fighting strategies against his opponents. Only Wang Dong'er truly understood everything when she finished watching this fight. Only she understood that the core of Hu Yuhao's abilities came from his spirit eyes, even though he had used so many soul skills. All his planning had revolved around his spirit eyes. Tang sect versus the Snow Demon sect. The Tang sect wins the first individual elimination round. Jing Zhon announced the result, watching Hu Yuhao carefully. Hu Yuhao gave him a very weird feeling. Down in the waiting area, Wei Na's astonishment slowly faded away. She nodded slightly, and her eyes flashed. She whispered a few words to her teammates before another young man jumped onto the stage. He quickly walked out to the center. As this was an individual elimination round, the stage couldn't be repaired, as that would give the victorious Soul Master the time needed to restore his soul power and energy. The tournament could only continue. At most, some simple repairs could be made before the team round. Both parties, please report your names. Tang sect, Hu Yuhao. Snow Demon sect, Chen Lu. The members of the Snow Demon sect were all glaring at Hu Yuhao, as if they were trying to figure out something about him. Hu Yuhao appeared as leisurely as ever, as if nothing had happened at all. His aura also hadn't changed because of the previous fight. Both parties quickly retreated to their respective sides of the stage. Hu Yuhao was still holding his milk bottle in his hand, and seemed to have no intention of putting it away. However, he didn't delay the fight either. He pressed 3 of the fingers of his right hand against his milk bottle before turning his wheelchair around. It was a pretty sad sight. The spectators weren't too hostile either, since the Sun Moon team had already been eliminated. They pitied him a little as they saw him in this state. Hu Yuhao turned around as he reached his side of the stage. Only he knew that the previous victory hadn't come easily. Wang Yangfeng was indeed very strong. The Soul Emperors of the Body Sect weren't inferior to Soul Emperors like Ma Xiaodao from Shrek. Even when Hu Yuhao was in his normal condition, he still had to give his all in order to beat such an opponent with his cultivation as a Soul King. Moreover, he was in a very deprived state right now. His greatest advantage was that his opponents didn't know him well. They also didn't know about the enhancement to his spiritual power that he had received after he went to the Icefire Yin-Yang well, and ended up in his current disabled state. Indeed, his spirit eyes were the core of all his fighting strategies. Begin, the unbreakable Doluo shouted, announcing the start of the second individual elimination round. Chen Lu crouched down before jumping forward. He was very quick, like an arrow loosed from a bow. He stuck close to the ground as he raced towards Hu Yuhao. Everyone was impressed by his speed. His speed was different from Wang Qiu'er's speed, which was generated from her explosive power. His speed came from his extremely great leaping abilities. When he came up onto the stage, Hu Yuhao had immediately realized his legs were different from those of normal people. They were more muscular and developed. His calves were so thick that they were almost the size of a regular person's thighs. As he leapt forward, he immediately demonstrated his shocking springing ability. He was in front of Hu Yuhao almost instantly. Sliding tackle. Against the immobile Hu Yuhao, Chen Lu chose an offensive method that was difficult to anticipate. Just as he was about to reach Hu Yuhao, he leaned back and kicked forward with his legs, one high and one low as he slid in. He wasn't targeting Hu Yuhao, but his wheelchair. It was a brilliant tactic. Jing Zhon's eyes brightened. Even though Chen Lu's attack was a little despicable, Jing Zhon had to admit that it was effective. If Hu Yuhao were without his wheelchair, it would be equivalent to him losing his legs. He already found it very difficult to move. Without his wheelchair, his fighting strength would fall considerably. Even though Chen Lu had 5 soul rings, just like Hu Yuhao, he seemed to have found the key to victory the moment he entered the fray. Everyone believed that Hu Yuhao had to stop his opponent's sliding tackle right now. Otherwise, he would lose his only form of mobility if his wheelchair was damaged. There wasn't going to be any way for him to face his opponent then. Even those from the Tang sect couldn't help but become anxious when they saw this. What method was Hu Yuhao going to use to deal with his opponent? Hu Yuhao didn't move. It seemed like he had no intention of stopping his opponent. Chen Lu was very quick, and was about to strike the wheelchair. Even Chen Lu was surprised when Hu Yuhao didn't bother to stop him. He was already prepared. If Hu Yuhao tried to stop him, he would unleash all his strength and destroy the wheelchair no matter the price. Once he did that, victory was almost certain. Just as Chen Lu was slightly uncertain, Hu Yuhao finally acted. He slapped the side of his chair using his right hand, and his wheelchair flew into the air. At the same time, his wheelchair slid diagonally to one side. Dodge. If he was just purely dodging Chen Lu's attack, Chen Lu was already prepared to deal with it. However, Hu Yuhao and his wheelchair seemed to fuse with the air as they dodged. They disappeared without a sound. Concealment. Chen Lu was shocked. He even forgot to retract his power, and only reacted after sliding more than 10 meters. He pointed his toes to the ground before leaping up again. However, he couldn't trace Hu Yuhao after he turned around. All the spectators were stunned when they saw this. Hu Yuhao is even able to conceal himself. Part 2 end here.